Anonymous, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey.
Wonderful.
So I don't think Anonymous is your given name.
No,
No? Okay.
no.
That would have been a really cool given name. Like if your parents were just like, I name him Anonymous.
I feel like that'd be mean, you know? That'd be really mean. Like naming your kid Null.
Tough in kindergarten, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
What's your question for us?
I just like to hear different people's perspectives and stuff.
Sure.
And so I wanted to hear what, in like an atheist perspective on the word sin would be.
Ooh.
Great question.
Can you give us your perspective just so that we can have something to contrast it to?
Okay, well, if using the general setting, I don't really necessarily see it as a Christian or even a theist term. I just see it as like a bad thing. I mean, if I was in church or a mosque or whatever, then I would see it as a theist. Then I would see it as having theist men. But if I'm just like, for example, like at the playground or something, and somebody used the word sin, I don't really see it as necessarily having a theist man. I just see it as you've done something bad.
Okay.
And I wonder if you had the same perspective.
Colloquially, yes. In practice and in my understanding of it, not in the slightest. So if you were to say, oh, that felt sinful, I would get that you're trying to communicate that you feel guilty about something that you did, or you think that somebody did something bad. Understood. And I think communicating that way, perfect. But that's word games. Let's talk about what sin is. When it comes to sin, what I learned was that sin was something that comes from the Bible. It comes from Genesis, the book of Genesis. When Adam and Eve partake of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil and bring sin into the world. Sin, in that way, is treated like a curse. It's something that has generationally followed, that every child is born with, and that is something that kind of stains your existence, so that when you die and people think that they go to heaven, that sin would prevent them from going to heaven. And so sin like that is very clearly laid out in the Bible. Now, if I were to try and define it for Christians, I'd be talking at them. And so I usually wait until they give their definition so we can meet them where they're at. But if you were to ask, my perspective on sin, I think it's very clearly lined out in the Old Testament. I think that there were ways to clean yourself of sin, which is lined out in Leviticus, that in the New Testament, Christian tradition has kind of stated that the sacrifice of Jesus. Oh, we lost you. That's a bummer.
Weird.
Was what kind of absolved you of that sin, and so that's the way that I would imagine until somebody gave it as a different as some kind of different definition. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, we're so sorry we lost you, Anonymous. It dropped out. But thank you so much for the question. So for me, I remember the very first time I was dating somebody who had been raised secular, and I mentioned sin, and he was like, "What is that? What is sin?" And I was like, wow, like the idea that somebody could have been raised without that concept was mind-boggling to me. And we do use it in a more colloquial way, mostly because our language has been shaped by a very specific religion in which that exists. So yeah, we have adopted the word sin to mean a lot of things. For me, I don't find use in the word anymore as an atheist, but I do see the use of using it when you're trying to communicate a very specific thing. So I would say that if I were pressed as an atheist to identify an actual sin, it would be something like what we are doing to the climate right now as humans. I would be like, that I think warrants enough of an oomph to be like, this is a sin against nature, against the climate, against the thing that we are surviving on.
Well, it's kind of where we are kind of cursing ourselves to the environment we put around us. So in a way, that poetically makes sense.
Poetically, yeah. I mean, we are not beholden morally to an arbiter that is nature or that is the climate, right? The climate is not going to instinctively, like, consciously punish us for doing a bad thing.
No, nature is not capricious and, or have its own way of thinking that it can, maliciously go after you because you slighted it. In some
right.
way.
But we are going to reap the unfortunate rewards of doing harmful things to it. So I think a sin, in my case, if I were to use it, which I don't like to, but if I were to, I would say a sin is something that you do against something that has power over you and you get punished for it, either intentionally or unintentionally.
I see. I think I can go the rest of my life without using the word sin. If somebody wants to describe it, I can colloquially get it. But I really like the idea of sticking people with blood curse. If you believe that sin exists as a biblical thing, you're talking about a blood curse. So if you want to talk about blood curses, we can talk about blood curses. But that's what it is. It's a blood curse.
Yes, and I think that has problems too of another variety that I won't get into right now.
It also follows like these kind of if you've ever looked into the old Victorian kind of miasma theory of disease, this kind of creeping thing that can stain an area, it's in the air, bad airs, that sin has also kind of been used in that way, like it's a smog over a bad place. But regardless, that's okay. We can disagree.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think that there are cases to be made for using it in a poetic or impactful oratory way, and there are cases for not using it at all because we don't ascribe to the Christian definition of it, which is disobedience to God. So yeah, we can definitely have this conversation again. If you want to call back and go more into it, feel free to do that next week. We're sorry we lost you again.
We're going to have to talk about this more.
We are.
I like people have talked about it as sin as being something that stains your soul, that is upon you in a physical way. But I want to explore that with you. So maybe we can have a glass of wine after the show and talk about it.
I think that would be fun.
Yeah.
That would be fun.